Morning all. माझ्या इथे संपलं. A very good morning to all of you. Welcome back to the second session on Research MSW006. In the first session, we have covered two blocks. The next two blocks we will cover in this session. The block 3 is mainly, we've seen the entire research process. Now, some of the concepts we will discuss in these two blocks in detail. Now, the block 3 is on tools and methods of data collection. Here again, there are 4 units. First unit is methods of sampling. The second unit is on research tools. Third unit is on interview, observation, and document. Fourth is on data collection. Now, as far as block 4 is concerned, the block 4 again has 4 units. One is on data processing and analysis. Second is descriptive statistics. Third is inferential statistics. And fourth is on reporting of research. So now we move on to tools and methods of data collection. Now, when we talk about sampling, what is sampling actually? Yesterday I did explain in brief what is meant by sampling. Now we will have a detailed look into what is sampling and what are the different types of sampling. Now when we talk about sample, there has to be a larger thing or a larger choose the sample. So that is called the universe. So universe is any large group which has one or more characteristics in common and which the researcher wants to study. That is a large group. For example, street children. It is a large group. So it's not possible for any researcher to study all the street children. So that is why what we do is we do sampling. Now, the universe may be of individuals, it may be of groups of people, it may be of organizations, or even of objects. Now, for example, if we talk about a research on voting, what would be the voting in the upcoming election? The universe would be all the voters. Now, if I talk about elderly, study on elderly, then it would be groups of people. Now, when I talk about objects, maybe we have a study on what are the type of toys which increase the learning abilities in children. So your object is the point of research. The toys are what we are researching. So that is why the universe may consist of individual, groups of people, organizations, or even objects. So this universe is the entire group. Now out of this, we will take a particular sample on which we conduct the study. Now what is sampling? It is a small proportion of the population which is selected for analysis. Now for any sample to be good, there are two things which are very important. One is representativeness, which means that the sample that we choose should represent the entire population that we want to study. Now, supposing I want to study teenagers. So what has to happen is there has to be teenagers across all sections, say amongst the slums, amongst the poor, amongst the middle class, amongst the rich. Only then I will say that this study is pertaining to adolescents. So there should be representativeness from all across all groups. Second is adequacy. The number of samples that I choose should be adequate. Supposing I say I have to study an entire city and I say my sample size will be 80. That is not good enough because 80 for us as a community like a city where the population is huge, a sample of 90 cannot be enough. So there is a table which tells us about how much size is adequate. So that these two things it's very important to consider while we do our sampling. Now, why do we have to do sampling? One thing is because the resources are limited. We have limited time. We have limited financial resources. Again, in terms of workload, there is how much it is possible to actually take on is again a question. Another thing is that when the results can be accurately calculated mathematically, the entire universe, sample will be good enough for drawing generalizations. Now, there is something called a sampling frame. Now, sampling frame is a list of respondents. Respondents are the people who you are going to interview or who you are going to collect data from. Now, a sampling frame means the list of all the respondents. For example, voters list. If I'm doing a study on the voting pattern of the population, then voters list is the sampling frame. Now, when we talk about sampling, there are two main types of sampling methods. One is the probability sample method, and the other is non-random, random and non-random, or probability or non-probability sampling. Now, when I talk about probability sampling, it is a type of sampling in which every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected in the sample. Say there are 100 people in your list, every person has an equal chance of being a part of the sample, which means it is a very non-biased and objective kind of sampling. That is what we call probability sampling. Now, in terms of probability sampling, there are various methods in which probability sampling can be carried out. The first method is the simple random sampling. We use this when the population is small, it is homogeneous and readily available. Homogeneous means having more or less the same characteristics. Now, here what we do is that we organize the number into a sampling frame. We prepare a sampling frame. Say one of all the people, say I'm talking about the students. So then if I have to do a study, then I will prepare a list of all the students in the college. That will be my sampling frame. And then to you choose the sample, what I will do is, I will take any random number. There is a table which is available of random numbers. I select any random number from there, and whichever random number comes is in my sample. Or also then I use the lottery system. So this is actually not a very scientific method. It is a very, chance-based method. Anyone can be there, and any random number which comes in my table can be a part of my sample, or any number which comes in the lottery system will be my sample. Now, the second type of method is the systematic sampling. Here, what we do is that we arrange the entire population in some particular order. And then what we do is we decide that from this we will choose at every regular interval. For example, in terms of students, I prepare the students list based on an alphabetical order. I give the computer a command, sort according to alphabets. The computer will sort that according to the names, according to the alphabets. And then I decide that I will, depending on how much sample size I want, supposing I have a students of 1000 and I want a sample of 100. So I will say that I will select every 10th name from the list. That is system. I start with the first number and then systematic manner. So this is systematic sampling. The next type of probability is stratified sampling. Stratified sampling we usually use when the population is very heterogeneous. Divide the population into two or more groups, and then subsamples are selected randomly from each group. Now, for example, if I say that I want to study, again, I'll give you the same example of adolescents in Mumbai. Now, in Mumbai, adolescents, there could be adolescents in middle class families. What I will do is, then I will stratify slum population, high, and then from them, from those three strata, I will again select my sample randomly. So that is stratified sampling. Then is cluster sampling. In cluster sampling, again, what happens is cities, and we will see what the population is. And then from each city, we will randomly select clusters of samples. So here there are two stages. One is that first I divide it into cities, and then from that cities again I choose which cities are going to be part of my sample. And third is that out of those cities, which are actually the houses which I will choose for the study. So that is why it is called multi-stage, because there is three stages involved in it. So this we spoke about the probability sampling. Next, we move on to the non-probability sampling. Now, when we talk about non-probability sampling, it is a method which is not probably very unbiased and objective. Here, what happens is some elements may have a chance of coming into the sample while the others may not have, which means that there is no equal chance of selection. So that is why it is known as non-probability. Here they are chosen either on the basis of personal judgment or convenience or certain assumptions, which we do not use any statistical measures for choosing the sample. That is why it is called non-probability sampling, where all members of the population have unequal chance or do not have an equal chance of being a part of the. Supposing I decide to do a study of a slum. Now, first day I may go to one house, and if that person is available, I will take that person in the sample. Then I will move ahead and see that okay, there is some there is one more person who's willing to give answers or be a part of my study, so I will interview him. So this is, I'm not following any systematic method that I will choose the second house or the fourth house or the 10th house. I'm just choosing whoever is available for study or whatever is convenient for me. So that is why it is a non-probability sampling. Now, again, in non-probability sampling, there are different types. The first type is convenience sampling. Convenience, or it is also called the accidental sampling. Here, what this researcher does is, no scientific method is used, and it's not it doesn't take into consideration whether the population is representative enough or no. Supposing I decide to do a study at a mall and understand behavior of customers. Whoever comes there at different times of the day, different parts of the day, a week or whatever, whoever is willing to answer my questionnaire, I will interview them. So that is why it is called accidental sampling. What the researcher does is he himself decides that whoever is appropriate, he thinks he will use for the study. Now here there is again what happens is that it's not necessary that I may choose people who objectively. Here I feel that only these many number of people are may have the knowledge about a particular subject, so I will only interview those people. So it is in that sense my judgment which comes into picture while choosing the sample, or it is sample which I have chosen on purpose. Where whoever I feel should be there in my study, I have chosen those particular people. The third type of sampling here is what we call the snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is used in research in social work, where hidden population is researched on, where even researchers carry relation, for example, cancer patients or HIV patients or commercial sex workers who are not easily identified. Who we cannot easily interview that particular commercial sex worker, and then she introduces me to the next person. Like this, an entire chain is formed. Then the second person introduces me to the third person. So that is why it is called snowballing, moving on from one to the other. So this is as far as the types of sampling is concerned. Probability, non-probability, in probability, the different types of sampling methods, and in non-probability, the different types of methods. Now, once the sampling is decided, we have to use and develop certain tools for collecting the data. Data collection, as you know, is very important part of any research. It is not necessary that actually the research can be invalid if your data is not accurate. So that is why what we need to do is we want complete information, we want accurate information, and we also have to see the cost benefit analysis. So even in terms of cost, we have to choose the methods of data or tools of data collection which are cost effective. So here there are different types of methods that we use for gathering data. Now these methods which we used for gathering data are known as tools or instruments of data collection. We use different types of methods. They could be observation schedules, interviews, questionnaires, rating scales, checklists, documents, etc. Now, the first type which we will look at is observation. Now, here observation is again of two types. One is participant observation, the other is non-participant observation. In participant observation, it is a kind of fact-finding technique wherein the social worker or the researcher either participates in a group or a person which performs an activity to gain information, which means that the group or the person about whom we are gathering information is aware that we are observing him. We are either conducting some activity with that particular group, or then we are listening actively, we are putting forth questions. So that is how we are observing. That is called participant observation. Now, the other type is non-participant observation. Here what happens is that the group is not aware that that the researcher is observing the group. So it could be used by, say, one-way screen, where it is everything is visible on your camera and you're observing, but the participants are not aware that your presence is there. Excuse me. The second type is interview. Now, as far as interviewer is concerned, what we do is we gather information face to face, where the interviewer and the respondent are face each other, and that is how an interview is conducted. Here, it is important to note that interview guide, where the areas on which or the questions on which we need answers are logically written down, or it is constructed in a logical manner, the interview schedule or the interview guide, and then we go and interact with the person whom we want to get information. Now here what happens is, the first thing is you can find facts, you can gather data. Second thing is you can verify data, and you can also clarify data. If someone says something and you think that it is not clear, you can again ask another question and clarify. Or you can also verify, like yesterday I gave you an example that if someone says that my income is 10,000 and my expenditure is 30,000, again I have a scope for verifying that. Then how do you manage the other 20,000 or whatever, Here again, you can get the participant actually involved in the interview, and you can also solicit several ideas and their views on different things. So face to face gives you that scope. Now here the advantages of interview are that it allows the interviewer to respond freely and openly to the question. And also it allows the interviewer to be a part of the project. The person who you interview is called the interviewee, and the person who interviews is called the interviewer. So the interviewee feels that he is part of the process, that he is involved in it. Also, if there is some if the interviewer has an interviewee has an interest in clarified, or if the question is not understood, you can reword it. Body language, sometimes if it is just a written thing which you send across questionnaires, there's no scope for it. But if you actually interview the person, you can see how the person reacts or responds. Also, if there is something which is beyond the questionnaire, and there are certain things which you observe that you're getting information on certain things that are not there in your questionnaire, you have a scope for even recording those responses. Disadvantages are that it is very time consuming and costly, because you go to each person, you fix an appointment, then you go, then you meet, and then you interview. So it is a little time consuming and costly. Again, here, if the communication skills of the person who's interviewing are not good, then the data obtained cannot be of a good quality. So that is why it depends on the communication skills of the interviewer. And another thing also here, the disadvantage is that it is dependent on the willingness of the interviewees to participate in the interviews. If they disagree, they cannot have an interview. Or if they halfway say that today I'm too busy, for the next part you come tomorrow, then you have to respect that person's whatever wish. You can force that, no, you can finish the interview today itself. Another tool of data collection is a questionnaire. Now, what happens in the questionnaire is that it is a list of questions on which you want to conduct the research or the survey. Now, it has four basic purposes, the questionnaire. One is to collect appropriate data. Second is to make data comparable and analytical. Third is to minimize biases in such a way that the questions are formulated in a very objective manner. And fourth is that the questions should be engaging and varied, and they should follow some logical order. Here, the type of questions could be factual, where you're just asking about facts. For example, what is my age? That is a factual question. There can be opinion or attitude questions where the respondents are asked about their feelings, beliefs, values. So the opinions. So these are not fact-based questions. These depends on individuals. So it is their opinion, their attitude. So it is attitude and opinion-based questions. Third is information-based question. When we want to know how the about if we want to know the how about particular or what about the particular questions, then these questions are included in the question. These are information questions. Then is perception questions. Perception is how I view a particular thing. For example, my perception about divorce. How do I look at divorce? Do I think that it is because there is no tolerance, or I feel that the girls have become too intolerant, that is why the rate of divorces is high, or I feel that love marriages, that is why. So that is my perception. It has nothing to do with information, nothing to do with reality. It is only my perception, which is based on my experiences. So these are the different types of questions. Now, again, one important type of question is open-ended and closed-ended or questions. Now, what happens in open-ended questions is that you keep the question open and the respondents can freely reply to it. For example, I ask about, if there is a question, say, which says that what is your opinion about online classes for students during the COVID? So now this is an open-ended. I can give whatever response I want. Now, when you talk about structured, there are options which are already given, and the respondent has to fit into one of those answers. For example, the same question, I can leave that question, do you feel that online classes during the COVID are good or bad? Are good, supposing, are good, are a good option. Yes, no. So yes, no, when I say it is a closed-ended question. But if I give no options, the person can give opinion. They're good, but they should only be there for 2 hours, or whatever the respondent wants to say. Now, as far as questions are concerned, it is very important that a very, very simple, clear, easy to understand and concise language is used in the questionnaires. No technical and complicated words are used. Again, no, or your opinion should not be a part of the question. For example, I should not put a question saying, do you feel love marriages are bad? Here again, I'm already making a statement. So that should not be the tone of the question. The question is, what do you think about love marriages? The third thing is that the questions should not be very long and complex, simple and short. So don't use, questions that may threaten the, where you have to take a standpoint, and if even if you say this, then you will be judged. So those questions where there is judging involved should not be used in the questionnaire. Now, the third type of data collection tool is documents. Now, what are documents? Documents are actually records which provide data to the researcher for scientific analysis. They could describe a process, they could describe a personal incident, they could describe a group development, or they could describe an event. So there are basically three types of documents. One are expressive documents, second is official records, and third is journals. Now, in expressive documents, again, there are three types. One is personal letters. What are personal letters? You all know at some point in time you must have written letters. So these personal letters where views and emotions are expressed freely. Those are personal letters. Second type is life histories or case studies. This could be in the form of diaries, they could be biographies, or they could be autobiographies. These are all used extensively by historians. Now, for example, I want to start working in a particular village. Now, if I want to find the history of that village, I may get some autobiography written by someone 100 years back, which I could refer to, which may give me some history about that particular village or some case study about. So that in that sense, life histories and case studies also provide us with a very important data. The third type of express accounts of small group processes. For example, there is a particular NGO who's working on, say, self-help groups. So they will have every group meeting, if they have recorded, then the you will get account of small group processes here. Or if we want to conduct a study of dropout of adult learners, then the NGO who is working on whichever agency is working with the adult learners will have a record of the learners of that particular group. So this is how what we mean by accounts of small group processes. Then the second type of records is official documents. The second type of documents is official records. Now, these include legislative, judicial, and executive documents which are prepared by various governments. They could be state governments, central governments, municipalities, panchayats, or any other local bodies. They could also be court proceedings, laws. These are all official documents. Again, official documents also include minutes of meetings, reports of various committees. For example, the report on, Minority Commission. That is also an official record. It could be reports of various organizations. It could be educational surveys. It could be institutional data. For example, data pertaining to how many SC and how many ST students are there in a particular college. So all this is official record. Official record is of two types. One is judicial government. Second is of meetings, reports, and also surveys. The next type of documents are journals. Now, all of you must have read some journal at some point while studying or when. Journal does is generally in journals, if you see, there are new ideas and developments which are published in journals even before they're published in any books. So journals are a very important and good source for reports on recent research studies that have happened in social work. They keep the social work researchers updated about the work that is being done in the field. So this is as far as documents is concerned. The next type of data collection tool is ranking scales. Now, ranking is a very different approach to data collection or gathering of data. Here, what is done is questions are asked to respondents where there is a comparison between items rather than rating them on a common scale. For example, what do I like more? Do I like fieldwork more? Do I like research more? Do I like theory more? So here I have to rank. What is my preference? What is my order of? There is a comparison. Okay, I like fieldwork more than I like theory, or I like research more than I like theory and fieldwork. So there is a comparison between different items. So this is called the ranking scales. Now, once we did up till now we discussed data collection. Now, once data is collected, as yesterday also I told you, what we need to do is we need to process that data, and after processing that data, I need to analyze the data. Now, in data processing, the first step is data editing. Now, in editing, first thing I will check whether the responses are complete, all the questions have been answered, or there is any omission in the questionnaires, any questionnaire has been left out, something that is written cannot be understood, or two options are marked, all such things, have to be checked in data editing. Also, for consistency amongst responses, I gave you an example yesterday that supposing a respondent says that I'm not married, and then in the next section, there is a question on children, and it says that I have 3 children. So you have to also check for consistency. For completeness, you have to check whether all the responses are complete. Also, you have to see that there is no ambiguity left, and the questionnaires are absolutely ready for the coding process. Once the data is edited, the next step is coding. What is meant by coding? Now, what coding means is in every question, there are responses. For every response, you will give a number. And you will give a numerical score so that you don't have to all the time enter the response. You will only enter the number corresponding to that response. So that symbol or that number is called the code. So it helps us, it makes us easy to interpret, classify, and record data. For example, if I say, are you married? Yes, no. Yes, I will give number 1. No, I will give number 2. That is how I will code my question. So when I enter data about that particular question, I will either enter 1 or I will enter 2. That is how we code each question. After the questions have been coded, the next step is data entry. Initially, we used to prepare coding sheets or master sheets. Those used to be huge sheets where every question, every data we used to do manually. We used to prepare a structure that for every question codes. You write down the code numbers for every question, and then you tick mark according to if there are 100 samples, you have 100 columns in that particular structure. But now it is done in SPSS or Excel. So it is much easier. You don't have to prepare a master sheet manually. So you prepare the framework and then you transfer all the codes from the questionnaire to the master sheet or the computer. This is called data entry. Now your data is ready for interpretation. The next step that you will do is you will tabulate your data. What is tabulation? Tabulation is a systematic and logical presentation of numeric data in rows and columns so that you can actually write about the data. It gives you the percentage of occurrence of a particular response. Supposing I prepare a table on gender, so it will give male and female, and it will give me the number of males in the sample. It will give me the number of females in the sample. So I will be able to, now the data after tabulation, it is ready for analysis. Then I move on to the data analysis. What is data analysis actually? Data analysis is we try patterns of relationships that exist in the data, one main thing, and to understand and describe the data. Also, it is computation of certain measures. We use certain statistical tests and we try and compute the data. Third is, if we have hypothesis in the study, we also test the hypothesis data. That what are our conclusions and what are our findings of the study. That is what happens when we do our data analysis. Now, data analysis, we have to prepare a plan of how we will do our data analysis. It could be univariate analysis, where the tables which we prepare are only related to one variable, which I gave you an example. Gender, there is only one variable, gender. It could be male or female. Now, there could be two variables also, which is called multivariate. We try to understand relationships between two different variables. For example, the relationship between education level of the respondents and the income of the respondents. Here, two variables are involved, and we're trying to see the relation between them. Similarly, it could be multivariate analysis where several variables are involved. For example, the impact of education and type of occupation on income. Here there are more than two. So similarly, there can be three, four, whatever. So those are called multivariate analysis. Now, as I said, that we compute certain measures when we are doing our data analysis. The first thing here we use is the descriptive statistics. Statistics is an important part of research. I will give you a brief introduction of what are the different statistics that are used in a research study. Now, when I say descriptive statistics, it means what we're trying to do is we are trying to measure the central tendency or the average. You must have done average when you were in the school. Na? We all learned what is average. Now, what happens is when you get data, it is of huge range. It could be, supposing how many children you have, it could range from 0 to 8. So that is a wide range. Now, many a times it so happens that we need to measure the data by a single value. So what you do is that you find the average. You find the central tendency or you find the average. Another example is if you want to find the average income of the BPL families in a village. Because when there are too many numbers, how do you make sense out of the data? So you want to find the central measure or the central tendency. So there are three ways in which which are used in social work for measuring the central tendency. One is the arithmetic mean. You all know arithmetic mean. Whatever values are obtained, supposing I say I have 0 children, 1 children, 2 children, there are 9 responses. So you add all of them, 0, whatever responses you get, and then you divide. Supposing I get all the responses, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. I add all and I divide it by the total number of respondents. That is called the arithmetic mean. The second type is median. And what happens in median is that you arrange all your responses from small to big. And then if the numbers are even, then what you take is the two values in the center, you take their midpoint, and that is the median. If the numbers are odd, it is easy, you just take the middle value. That is your median. Mode, when I talk about mode, it is a value which is repeated most often. Supposing I have 10 responses on the number of children, and supposing 7 people say that we have 2 children, then 2 is the mode, because 2 is repeated maximum number of times, 7 number of times. So that is the mode of the study. 2 is the mode. That is as far as descriptive statistics is concerned. Then we move on to the inferential statistics. Inferential statistics is we try to find out if there is any relationship or there is any variation between the variables. Here the different methods used are: one is Carl Pearson's coefficient correlation, coefficient of correlation. Second is the chi-square test. Now, now, if we want to measure what is the difference, we use paired t-test, or we use t-test for independent samples, or we also use one-way analysis of variance. The formula for all this is given in your books. So I don't think when I am really taking the class, it would be possible to discuss the formulas. I'm just making you aware of whatever methods are there. Now, again, for measures of what happens in central tendency is that you come to know about the homogeneity or the similarity of the data. But if we don't know what is the difference among or what is the heterogeneity of the data. So when we want to find out that, we use measures of variability. There are different ways in which we do it. We find out the range, mean deviation, standard deviation, coefficient of variation. So this is as far as statistical tests are concerned. Right? Up till now, we discussed how we will collect the data. After collecting the data, how we will process the data. After processing the data, how we will analyze the data. For analyzing the data, what are the different statistical tests we may use? What are tables? What is bivariate? What is univariate? What is multivariate? All that we have discussed. So we have finished our data analysis. Now the last important point that we need to discuss is the research report. What should a research report look like? When you prepare a research report, the first section of the research report is the beginning section. Now, what all do we need to include in the beginning part of the report? My first thing would be your title page. In the title page, you will write the title of your report or the study. You will write the name of the researcher. You will if there is a guide in case of academic research studies, you will write the name of the guide. The date will be there. The second part would be in the beginning only. The second part would be the acknowledgements. The third section of the beginning would be your table of, everyone knows acknowledgements, whoever you want to acknowledge or you want to thank. Third would be the table of contents, what all is there in your entire report. Fourth will be a list of tables and figures. As I already told you that you will prepare tables, and then you may convert those tables into pie diagrams or bar diagrams or whatever you want. So those would be figures, or you may give certain pictures or figures or photographs, whatever. So you need to give a list of those tables and figures. Next would be your abbreviations. Wherever you have used abbreviations, you give the full forms of those in the beginning section itself. And the fifth would be glossary. Glossary is the explanation of the terms that you have used in the research. So in the beginning portion, these are the things you need to cover. Then comes your main body of the research. Now, in the main body of the research, the first important part would be your introduction, where you would introduce your entire research study, your background, your theoretical and conceptual framework. All that would come into the introduction part of it. Your statement of the problem, and then your rationale for the study, why you're doing this study, what is the significance of the study, all that would be included in your introduction part. Then would be your second part would be, in the main body would be a review of literature. Whatever literature you have reviewed, whether it is books, it is journals, it is reports or whatever, all that you will, in this research of review, you will add that part. The third part would be your methodology, where you would include your research design, your objectives of the study, the key concepts and their operational definitions, the hypothesis that you have used in the study, the sources of data, the sampling techniques, your data collection, including your experiences during data collection, then the analytical procedures that you have used in your research, and finally the scope and limitations of your study. So this would form your methodology part. We've already discussed what is research design yesterday. We have discussed key concepts and their operational definitions also we have discussed in the last class. Sources of data means it could be primary source, secondary source. Again, that also I had explained yesterday. Primary is when you actually go and interrogate data directly from your respondents. That is primary. Secondary is when you get data from other sources like printed material, books, online, or journals, or government reports. That is your secondary source, where you do not actually go and collect data, but you use sources that where data has already been compiled or collected. Sampling we discussed again today. What are the different methods of sampling? In data collection also we discussed what are the various tools of data collection. And in addition in the report would be your experiences. That what was your experience when you collected the data? When you go and you meet different kind of people, there are different experiences you may face. Maybe that for some particular questions, people may get emotional. Some questions people may get aggressive. Some questions people may not be willing to answer. So these could be your different experiences which you can record. Of course, you don't have to write the names of the people. You just have to write your general experiences. Sometimes it may so happen that everyone was so cooperative that you feel so overwhelmed. That is your experience of data collection. So whatever experience you have, you need to write in your data collection part of the methodology part of the report. Then analytical procedures, already I've told you what are the different statistical tests that we use and all of that, whatever you're using in your test, whether you're testing hypothesis or whatever, you need to mention in your methodology. Now, scope and limitations is a very important part of the methodology. What you do in scope is you actually tell that what is it that you're going to cover. For example, the scope, if I'm doing a study of NGOs in Mumbai, I will say the housing, I will say the scope is limited to the NGOs who are working in Mumbai and also to those who are working only on the issue of housing. Now, limitations means that what is it that the study will not be able to do. Probably I'm not tracing the background of or how those NGOs emerged. So my study will say that the limitation of my studies, I'm not studying the emergence of the NGOs. I'm just studying what all work they have done and what they have contributed or what has been their contribution. So that is the limitation of my study. So in a similar manner, whatever scope is there, of your studies there and whatever limitations, you need to spell out in your methodology part, and you need to be clear about it right at the beginning when you start your study. The next portion of the main body is your analysis and interpretation of the data. Most important part. Here again, as I said, you will from the tables that you have drawn, you will show your analysis that what is the frequency, what is the relation between the various variables, and then you will also interpret data. For example, a table shows that the number of females in a particular slum, amongst 0 to 5, the age of 0 to 5, the number of males is say 1000 and the number of females is say 700. So this is analysis, but when you interpret it, it says that the sex ratio is very bad. It is 1:, which means for 1000 males, it is just 700 females. This is your interpretation of the data. Then you try and compare it with the national census statistics. That would be your interpretation, which means that there is a serious problem as far as sex ratio in that particular area is concerned. So then you will try and find out relations with other things. Is it that because females are preferred more, or what is the reason? So that is the interpretation of data. Or is it that there is a high rate of female feticide or whatever? You will try and find out and correlate it. That is interpretation of data. The next part is your main findings and conclusions. Now, in the analysis, you will interpret all the data that you have got. Everything may not be significant. So, in the main findings, you will highlight what are your important findings and what conclusion you will draw from your findings of your research. So, that is your next important part, which is main findings and conclusion. Now we move on to the last part or the end part of the report, which is references and bibliography. When you talk about referencing, are you aware of references and bibliography are two different things. References is, for example, I have quoted someone. I have taken the exact words, so I need to put it under referencing section, where I have taken the exact paragraph or exact sentence. And bibliography is all that I have read, which has helped me shape my ideas on that particular topic. All the list of books, or all the list of journals, or all the list of online material that I have just read, which I have not actually quoted, is my bibliography. So there are two different things. One is references and one is bibliography. Then in the end part, you will also have the appendices. In the appendices, what all needs to be added? You need to put all the tables. You may not put all your table in the report. You may sometimes just use words to describe the frequency tables, or there may be some tables which you are not using for the study because you no longer find them relevant. At the time when you were framing the questionnaire, you felt that these questions are important, but in the process of data collection, you did not get any response, or no, so majority did not answer the question, whatever, and you feel that these tables you don't want to add in the main report. However, all the tables you need to add at the end as appendices. Each and every table should be there in your appendices section. The next part which needs to be there in your appendices, the next appendix, is your tools of data collection. For example, if you have used questionnaire, then you have to put that entire questionnaire in the appendix section in your research report. If you have translated it into Marathi, then you have to also put the Marathi translation there, whatever. Or if you've used two tools of data collection, supposing you have experts, and then secondly you have conducted the survey of the respondents, then you put both the tools in the appendix section. Third is also nowadays there is a lot that is being said about the ethics of research. So there is something called the consent form. Ethics means that whoever are the participants of your study, we also don't widely use the word respondents is the old term, but your book uses respondents, so I'm using respondents. We call them study participants. Participants is all those people who participate in my study, or who are part of my study, or from whom I collect data, who fill my questionnaire, or who I interview, are my respondents. Now, what happens is that before even I conduct the research, what I need to do is I need to explain what are the objectives of my research to my respondents. I have to, in what way I'm going to use the data that has been collected from them. Thirdly, I need to assure them that whatever data has been collected will be kept confidential. It is very important as research that you never name any person in your report. Even if you have to give examples, you change the name, or you use alphabets like respondent A said this or respondent B said this. You are never supposed to reveal the identity of the respondents. So these are some things you need to assure the respondent about it. And then there is a consent form that you actually prepare, where you write the objectives, and then you mention that I am willing to participate in the research, and I am free to leave the research at any point in time, or there is no compulsion to answer all the questions. This is a consent form that we take from each respondent for validity of the research. Ethics and consent is very, very important. So so that when your study is completed, you can say that okay, I have taken consent of each respondent for the study, and after only taking the consent, that respondent is a part of my study. So that in the appendices section. And the last part is your statistical output. Whatever tests, the formulas you've used, whether you've done it manually or you've done it in the SPSS package, all of that will be included in your research report. So this is as far as block 3 and 4 is concerned. If there are any questions, we can address those questions. If there are no questions, we can end the session. We can stop here. No questions? Okay. So thank you all. Wish you all the very best. One request is for research, don't waste for the wait for the last minute. Please go through your notes at least 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, because there's a lot of statistics in that. Statistics, unless you practice, you will not be able to do it. Also, it's a very technical and theoretical subject where if you don't understand concepts, it will be difficult for you to really answer your exam or to even write your assignments. So even if you've not received your hard copy of the notes, go to eGyanKosh, download the soft copy and read your notes. The notes are very good as far as IGNOU is concerned. The study material is excellent. This will always help you, and research is something you will always do when you are in the field of social work. So it will help you a lot in your field work, and even if you're teaching, it is required. So if you do it seriously, it will help you in the long run in whichever field you're working. Thank you very much, and all the best. हे करूंगी